would either of y'all, am I about right? 10 megs is kind of the minimum standard going forward, you know? 25 and 25 down, 3 up is kind of the, yeah, okay. Does that sound about right, Terry? And then with a...
And the CAF 2 funding is such that fixed wireless internet.
Yeah.
You know, the requirement is 10 meg, 10 meg and one other.
Right, okay. And again, not tossing any stones here. The reason I bring it up is because a lot of folks have had data transferred through the old phone line system, known as DSL. And I would say, as we move forward and try to track where we have internet, I'm going to likely exclude anybody that's got tag-along DSL in this, in terms of in this map, because it's an outdated technology. It's going away. You can't readily get it at this point. And again, and I don't fault the service providers for that, because at the end of the day, you know, you want to stand behind a service that's reliable, and that old technology is just not, you know, it's not there. So we've got to figure out how to move forward from here. But just to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. Now, I will say, and I'd like to hear y'all's thoughts on this. I mean, and I'm sure these guys would too, but it is becoming clear to me that we may have to, on the far stretches of our county, consider some of these alternative options for high-speed internet. It does sound to me like the 5G is something that that could be kind of like that long-term thing. But I mean, you know, for both of y'all, for the portions of our county that are furthest safe from I-75, both north and south, you know, what do you envision producing for that service over the next 10 years or so? I mean, that's kind of the challenge to me, is that I guess what I'm trying to get at is that the speeds required to do normal business through the internet, because of that chart he showed you, and again, regardless of what the X and the Y exactly were, I think his point is that, you know, the usage, the data that's having to go back and forth continues to go up. And part of that is because the programs that are getting built, you know, require more code. They're heavier. The images are, you know, we used to just worry about having a video. Now we've got to try to produce HD quality, you know, TV through the internet. So there's a lot more coming through. My first, I think, you know, non-wired high-speed internet solution had a cap of 50 gigs, I think, 50 gigs per month. And, you know, I checked this morning to see, and we're not even halfway through the month, and I've already used 250 gigs this month, you know, at my house. So, again, the need for data and the need for that pull is getting bigger, and it seems like the concern I've got, Terry, quite frankly, and to our other ISPs, is that I don't want to build something that's made for today's standard if that trend is continuing in that direction. Does that make sense? It makes no sense. Yeah. So to me, right now, the highest, the thing that would be the best, if we had unlimited amounts of money, would be to be able to run fiber throughout our county. Is that, if we were not limited by funding, would that be the most?
That's a silver bullet for everybody.
Right. That last mile is where, you know, where it gets tough. So.
Estimates that to deploy fiber in a rural environment, you're talking, you know, it could be anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 a mile to place the fiber. And how many subscribers do you think of it? You know, and that don't, those numbers, they vary. It depends on the rain and all that kind of stuff. It's very costly. And in rural environments, you're not getting very many subscribers to help defer that cost.
Exactly, right, okay. All right, so let me just make sure I'm not missing something before we move into questions from the floor. And before I do that, let me pause just for a second to ask my coworkers here, any thoughts on any of this?
I'd like to ask Terry a question.
All right.
Correct me if I'm not wrong, but when AT&T, we always call them telephone poles, but they're actually power poles. So when y'all hang your lines on those power poles, y'all have got to have, say, for example, 36 to 42 inches below the live line. All right? That's where the cost comes in, because a lot of your poles got to be raised, you got your pole fees and all that. Some of these counties and states are going where the EMCs are stringing fiber because they put it right there next to their line. And I mean, is it where they could do that and then they could contract with AT&T or somebody or a private person to take it from the pole to the house?
I'm speaking very limited knowledge of this. Our separation distances on the poles, we have poles as well, utility poles as well. But we have to maintain, whether it's our pole or the power company pole or the EMC pole, according to the National Electric Code, we have to have a certain distance separation. I would think any provider
Correct.
maintain that same separation regardless to the provider.
Because I was reading where an EMC somewhere in Georgia was doing this now, and they don't fall under the same thing. Since it's their pole and their wire, they can put their fiber anywhere they want, so they don't have to put a taller pole.
I can't speak to that. I don't know.
But if they did have something that could AT&T not contract with them to run from that fiber into the house, where you got telephone lines running in there, or would that have to be a private contractor?
Would it be our network, we would provide our service. I mean, if we place the fiber, it would be our contractor.
Now, I guess I just say wrong, but say EMC hangs the fiber, the cable, the fiber, whatever you want to call it, they hang it, they don't have the restrictions. Could they then not contract with AT&T when you got a phone running to a house?
Where's it going to connect to on the other end? It's going to the house, where's it going to connect to on the other end?
Well, it'd be like at each individual slot on the pole, you got to have certain places to connect to.
You got to go back to a central office. Somebody's got to originate the service.
Yeah.
It depends on who's the originator of the service.
Because your map shows great, like we got great coverage, but it's not there. I mean, I tried AT&T and all of them all the time, and there's places that they know is dead for 15, 20 years, yet you advertise like they got 4G. So there's got to be some solutions. Thank you, though.
All right, yep, thank you very much. All right, well, let's take some questions, and let's see, in order, I've got 1, 2, actually, I promised you a question, I'm sorry, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll keep going from there.
When you said DSL or speeds, that's not it. DSL is a wired connection, and usually you have unlimited capacity with DSL. I was paying $150 a month for wireless internet for 80 days capacity. That's a lot of money. So all of these killer gigs and all this, you're going to be paying more over the air compared to a wired connection. So unless you know what paying $150 a month, whatever it is for capacity, DSL might be a cheap option. Free meg or turn it down or whatever. So that's one of the things. So capacity is just as important as doing more to speed. And then, so the other question is,
Agreed.
for
Yep.
AT&T, you did great for River Forest and did well. But what they do is they do some strong business behind the scenes. And I'm just wondering. So,
I'm okay. I hear you.
I can't,
But-
I can't address service issues outside this forum. I just can't do that.
I understand completely, yeah.
But they,
Yeah.
what they've done, though, no, it's not just them, it's others too. They go in and longer price old internet. They own them. And then they drop service. They say, what's it? We have a place 15 miles down south, we can't get on the internet. And they have it, and there's no source of it. If you wired, it's worse now than it was before you wired it. So that's one thing.
This is DSL you're talking about?
DSL.
Yeah.
And so, and then once you wire, you can't go on to a charter or anybody else to do it because they own it. They own it. You can't have competitors in the same region. So I believe anybody we don't prevent, nobody prevents them from doing that.
What's the bottleneck for the DSL, Terry?
It's
Is it the line itself?
Yeah, it's think of a pipe serving a group, and the usage of it is compacted. You can't add anybody else to it. You can't add any more folks to it. The only alternative is replace it with a new technology. That would be fiber from point A to point B, however long that is, and the associated equipment. So these exact exactly right. I mean,
Yeah.
It's an exhaust point, you can't add anybody else to it because the service is already so bad that anybody added to it is great.
Anything you want to say?
But anybody can choose to go in and provide the service in your neighborhood if they choose to do it. I'm not saying they don't want to, but they can't.
I'm going to let Brittany speak.
And to speak to the capacity, some of our benefit private radio, it's almost like trying to keep a golf ball down water hose. Once it won't work. You have a little baby issue, we have
Yeah.
it won't get clogged.
Yeah, it's just,
What, very low is the, who owns the actual line, is like, when you're in the right of way, it's not necessarily, their home, but it's another provider, like agency owns the provider, another provider, their line provider.
which, yeah. All right, again, thank you, that's a good question. We'll hover around that, back around that. Who was my next, number 2? Okay, go right ahead. What was your name again, ma'am?
Becky Merritt.
Okay,
I live not very far from, you can see the solar tower can share from my house. There's 2 cell towers that you can see standing from my back porch. You can see one on my front porch. You can see the other. I happen to have Verizon service. My son has AT&T service. Neither one of our phones get quality reception from those 2 towers. And I believe it has something to do with Georgia Power Plant share being out there, because anytime you get anywhere close to the power plant, the closer you go to it, the worse the cell service gets. And so, what are y'all doing to combat that?
how you going to fix that, Terry? I'm just checking. All right,
There's coverage concerns for everybody that's in here. I can't address that specifically. I don't know.
I'm just-
Yeah.
that's a good, valid point.
Now, just a little background, but the power plant has the large power lines that you're showing when you put this air stuff on. Is that going to be something considered like cellular data that you're buying for your cellular? Is that, or is
Right
this
now,
going to be something that we're going to sell? I mean, what is it that you're saying you're going to offer that I don't understand how it works?
Right now, that technology is being tried, okay, to see if it works. If it works like tested out to be, it'll offer gigabit services to subscribers that are in that footprint of that power line infrastructure, okay, wherever it goes. Now, how it'll be priced, what they'll associate, I don't have any idea. We want to see if it works. We want to see if we can deploy it.
So
All right.
you wouldn't be able to say if it's cellular data versus internet data.
It'll be internet data. It's not wireline service. It's wireless.
Okay,
But not cellular.
It's wireless data, just like 4G LTE.
It is the same.
okay. All right, well, thank you, good question. Who's next? Who was my 3rd person? Yes, Mr. Harbin.
I had both a question and a suggestion.
Okay,
Actually, as far as mapping this and trying to find out within our entire county who has service, who's it with, what the speed is, and all that, is it possible to use the mailing list for the tax records? Everybody gets a tax bill, a property tax bill, and that mailing list is used for hard survey, say, for this piece of property, you have service, is it with, what your speed is up and down, and that could be, we already got a GIS system set up, keep public and some of the other things. I would think it would take a little bit of labor to record those things and map that out. It would probably give us the best option.
that's not a bad idea. Yeah, yeah, that's not a bad idea.
So if you would have each property that's owned, you would be able to collect that data. And if you didn't get it back to the person, maybe somebody can make a phone call to collect that data. So
It's good thought.
the recommendation. And I think one of the questions I had, I can't remember now, had to do with the speeds, the 10 gigabyte megabit speed. Was that wired or wireless or?
That's wireless. That is 4G LTE. Yes, Pete, I think there is some similar situations with our wireless services now, based on a gigabit per minute.
All right.
Any idea on the cost?
I can't speak.
Let me move. Thank you. Good stuff. Next,
I got to go, okay? I mean, I'm sorry, I got to go.
I appreciate you being here. I really do. Let me ask you one question. I'm gonna halt the question because I do, before you go, if I could hit both of y'all on this. One of the things in just my digging around and Googling, and trying to find out what some other counties are trying to do to help, assist with things, I have learned about, some counties have started a policy, a one dig policy, or dig once policy. Have you heard about that or read about it at all? And
I mean, our company's been involved with one big part for a long time, especially for division development. We had worked, I came out of that background 20 years ago. We replaced our facilities in the same thing. Our company replaced theirs, so we were just one thing to do. I've heard that. I don't know any more details in this latest iteration that I haven't talked to anybody about that. I don't know anything about it specifically now.
is that allowed? Can you do that? And can you use the same trench as the power company these days?
Yes.
Okay.
They got certain separation.
Good. Okay, so the idea is this, that, and from what I've read, I mean, the cost savings is incredible. Again, Anita and I have started the discussion and trying to figure out what the real cost is, but the idea is apparently, as I understand it, 90+% of the cost of running fiber is your labor. And the material costs are not the thing that's really the main challenge. So the idea being, if we're going to have, every year we have LMIG projects, we have, we're resurfacing our roads, and we're going to have labor handy. And sometimes if y'all ever drive by these projects, I mean, there are times where people are not necessarily being utilized for the road. And so, the thought was, and the idea was, maybe we could start looking at a dig once policy and try to incorporate some of the costs, or while we've got workmen out there, while we've got equipment out there, while we're going foot by foot down a public right-of-way resurfacing, could we not also be laying our own network of fiber as a county? And again, some of the questions that relate to that are beyond what we're going to be able to get to today, but I thought it important to at least mention the idea today because, I mean, the state, I read this article in Georgia Trend, and it talks about how at the federal level, they're running, they have plans to run fiber up and down the entire interstate and connect it to other states, and a lot of the right-of-way that they own. Anyways, I'm just kind of thinking, is there a way to, on a smaller scale, follow the state's, the federal initiative on connecting fiber? And so again, how we get recompensated back for that, for usage, from ISPs would be a question. How do we fund it would be a question. But what I would like for y'all to do is continue to help us to brainstorm and figure out how do we get this done, and what can we as a county do to help facilitate. I mean, we've got as many people in this meeting today as I've seen in a commission meeting since we've been here. So the need is there. I mean, people, I know a lot of folks wish they could have been here, today, and it's just that they work for a living, so they couldn't be here. But anyway, so I would like y'all's help exploring that, and if you're not the guy to talk to about how the economies work with that and how, I'd be interested in hearing back from you on that. Anything else for Mr. Smith before he goes?
No.
Thank you so much for taking your time and being here today. Appreciate it.
Talk to me, have them contact you, you can reach out to me, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. Appreciate you. All right. Yeah. Okay, let's keep some questions moving, and again, this is helpful for me. Did I ever get to my number 4 or 5? Okay, yes, sir, right here, and then...
I'm Bill Jackson, retired network infrastructure administrator.
Okay.
Central Georgia Catholic College. I put in a fiber optic backbone is Cisco Sweet, 7 towns, including one road. I ran into people everywhere, and this was a long time problem. High-speed access is like electricity. It's 100% necessary for everybody. Banking, shopping, you name it, gotta be. In 1930, 90% of rural America did not have electricity. 1935, Roosevelt signed the Rural Electrification Act. 20 years later, 90% of them had it. 1991, Tim Berners-Lee created the first worldwide web page. Today we're doing the law is in for everything we do. This has to be something that doesn't necessarily stay in the hands of cable companies or phone companies. Because as long as they control it, they've got to have a profit, and they're not going to reach beyond their profit. I don't know the solution. I know the term broadband they use in your life. All broadband uses multiple areas in one line. It doesn't have anything to do with bandwidth. There's a lot of people that have broadband that ain't got high-speed access. Bandwidth is what you want to find out about. Most people's anger is because they thought when we got broadband, we got sorry bandwidth would be gone. Some of them, I can use mobile access point, get the internet out in the middle of nowhere for this thing, as long as I'm close to the interstate. The interstate is where the number one road in the United States of America is. Three different interstate centers. Monroe County's got it. As long as you're close to the interstate, you can get high bandwidth. You get away from it, you're not going to get it. So if we don't take care of our children that live out in Brockville, help them get something by looking at alternatives other than the phone company and cable company and those things. I don't know what the solution is. I wish I did. But I think there's got to be one there. In the meantime, I think you all do an excellent job of trying to push it.
Thank you.
They
Yeah.
want the money. For them, it's about money. For us, it's about living decent life.
Yeah, very good. Yes, ma'am.
So from today, we've established what our problems are, what we want, and what we need, but what's the one thing we can all do from here? So we've gathered today, but where do we go from here? Is it talk to our neighbors? Is there one thing?
That's a great, I mean, honestly, I appreciate you saying that because my immediate thought and response to this gentleman was that that's why we're doing this. Because if you guys have to totally rely on me to come up with the solution, we're in trouble. I want to, my job as I see it, and these gentlemen's job and the commission's job is to be your voice and to help once we've got a solution that is viable and fundable, to do whatever we can within our power to make this work. You do not have to sell me. I personally, like I've said before, I'd rather have internet than a paved road or water, because I can dig my own well, and if I got to buy a load of crush and run every now and again to get to my house, honest to God, I'd rather have high-speed internet personally, and I feel like that's, a lot of folks feel that way. So how can you help? Here's how you can help. Just like Mr. Harbin handed me this article right here. Okay, a good idea. Again, I would love for our county and the people that live within the county to help me and help us research, what's being done. There's no reason why we should have to reinvent the wheel. Good government is copycatting, in my opinion, what other organizations and what other counties have done. Again, without polling, I would believe that there are counties that are our size, across the country that have maybe led the way in figuring this stuff out. So I need y'all to help, funnel some of these ideas, allow me to be your voice and us to be your voice with the service providers, not just for your sake, but for their sake. and also, to aggregate some of these things, because it's there, as y'all have seen, I mean, there's so much out there. There's so many ideas on this. What is high-speed internet? I mean, depending on who you ask, it could vary. So sending ideas in and helping us to brainstorm, helping us to stay connected with what other states and local governments are doing, any of those things would be very appreciative. And then the second thing I'll say is that when we get to the point where we do, when we're ready to do a survey, to me, that will be very important for the future of this internet development in this county, because it's data that we can use going forward. Again, some of the stuff is proprietary to these companies, and I'm not going to ask them for it because it's just not fair to them to have to turn it. I wouldn't give proprietary business information from my company just publicly. So, but does that make sense? And good question. Okay, I think Bo, and then, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was
Bo.
going to add to the completeness of some of this conversation that we have a similar problem in the industrial park with the power. We're working with Middle Georgia Regional Commission for USA. There's money out. I'm not going to get an argument about taxes or anybody else. But like I said, as the bill is going, working through the Senate, it would allow for rural broadband. If we're going to tackle a private industry, we're going to find out what's funded, then that's what it is. And it's also having a very tough look at the man in the mirror, how much you're willing to pay to get it done. It's most of the money a lot of times. But I'm in support of it.
Okay. Thank you.
That's what I was going to say. We've got USDA money. We need to go after those transfers from our rural areas, because as Gary kept saying, if you do it once at $5 million, you have 30 subscribers.
We put in a grant request.
So somehow we have to get around that. Their business, they have to get some, very people out, way out there, and they spend $5 million on it. That's not very interesting to them. So it also sounds to do that. Very saying, it sounded like they got federal dollars to do this rural stuff. And they're saying that because of federal dollars, they had to provide that service for federal dollars. So it sounds to me like we're stuck with federal dollars. A lot of this stuff is federal dollars.
That's where the,
There are private entities that can take this problem on. It's happening. So reliance on federal dollars,
I don't wonder what I'm
can
doing.
go, I'm saying, can go to people other than AT&T.
Right, that's
Can
what
go
I
to
mean.
people other than that.
We need to look at those things.
Well, that's all very agreed. I want to ask you your question, and I've got Greg Head, who's actually a member of our Development Authority, had something he wanted to share too, if you don't mind.
While Mr. Woodward is here, because a large problem with what's happening with the internet in our county is like me, I have DSL service, and you say, and maybe it's not even relevant, it really isn't. I have a child that struggles passing classes because we don't have access in the evening time when my child needs to use it, because the system is blocked. If the school has that access available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, are y'all having kids sit in their cars in the parking lot?
We do have families, we have people come sit in our parking lot. We drive out there and said that people pay their bills or get online for their college class until 6 o'clock,
Yeah.
which is what time we turn it off usually, because it's a safe. So,
Yeah.
we do have kind of that opportunity.
Is there something we could allow access into maybe determination? Something that you would have to have people on
So
staff.
we do have a girls club that meets 5 days a week that does have quality internet service. We've got, like I said, our open network is available, late afternoon hours.
it's cold up here.
That's-
I would say Quantum Middle Georgia. If they hear this, you know, they've been alive with groundwork. I think they can help.
Yeah.
If we have online, classes, Sunday morning, technical college and do computers our way. And a lot of people that take online classes that live out in Broadway do that. Not just in Monroe County, but 7
If we have that in the city, you've got the people out in Clothing that have the same problem, that their parents drive all the way back to the city. Or you got the people in Juliet with the same problems. Is there a way that maybe the county could use some of our recycling center property or some of our, is there something that the county could do with some of our properties that the county already owns? Maybe offer that kind of access to students so that we don't have kids stay home.
I like that. That's a good idea. Good thought. I'm going to ask Mr. Barber and then Greg.
Yeah, just to expand on that idea, I think a short-term solution, which I need very badly, I need a short-term solution, kind of like this last week. I think TableNet is a great position to open up an internet cafe downtown. And absolutely, my son's well, I was going to say, I'm willing to drive. Access to a job is so important to me. I will drive downtown 8 by 8 hour for a high-speed internet access. That example of Florida Road, where you go to the destination,
Text me.
If you can sit right outside the window, that's what everybody else do. Sit right out there and you can get it.
You can have McDonald's good.
Greg, did you have something you want to share? Yeah. All right.
Something that was touched on earlier.
Hold on one second, sorry. Greg Head, take. We'll come back to you.
We had a couple of people, like Miss Susan Holmes said, my question is, how are we going to pay for it? That's all. Y'all know we need it. Miss Susan Holmes said, the federal government, state government is not going to fund it. You're not going to. You can sit there and apply for a USDA grant, and I think a lot of people don't realize how much those cost. You're going to sit there and engineer plans to put internet throughout this county. In just one subdivision, you're talking about spending $150,000 just to put some plans together, send it to the federal government, just to think you're going to get approval. And it could be 1 year, 2 years, 5 years down the road before you get approval or just denied. So to me, relying on the government is for that aspect, is kind of mundane for me. Just like the school system said, they can go on eProm and have these e-books, cut costs, and do away with a lot of books. So my thing is, and on top of that, AT&T said they put $5 billion in 2 years, and we're still in the same spot you are now. So it really, it's like throwing a case full of money out the window, letting it hit the ground, see where it lands. I don't really see much use in it. To fix wireless internet, one of the slides shows it goes out 20 miles maybe. How many of those you're going to put out through the county to get internet service?
About what, 400 square miles?
It's just not, to me, I don't think it's a little feasible. So